The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 64.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us today on the EL. Today we have Honoree Corder, author of Vision to Reality. Welcome, Honoree, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
Sure. My name is Honoree Corder, and I am a business coach, executive coach, corporate trainer, motivational speaker, and 13-time author. I live in Austin. I have worked with entrepreneurs, business owners, senior level professionals for about 15 years to help them achieve their biggest vision and solve their biggest problems. My background is in the corporate world and in network marketing. And so I've had two distinct, successful, separate careers that have both informed and influenced how I work with people today and how I build and grow my own businesses and the path that I'm on as an entrepreneur and as someone who will never be employed officially.
Excellent. Well, Honoree, thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump right into your latest book, Vision to Reality, which was just made available for purchase on April 11th, 2014. And we're going to move quickly, but here are some of the top questions our listeners would love to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing Vision to Reality?
I wanted a reference book for myself and for others that isn't just the tip of the spear, but is that sharp point of the spear that would give the formula for turning what's in our mind's eye into our actual real life reality, the life that we're living every single day. What's the path? What was the way to make that happen? And that's the book that I wrote, in Vision to Reality.
So you and I were just discussing beforehand how many books will come out on entrepreneurship every single month. And this next question is really to separate yours from others. And that's, so what makes your book different from others regarding the same topic?
My book is different because I didn't add in any additional pages. I went straight for, again, that the tip of the spear, that very sharp point. I give the absolute, what do you do? And then what do you do? And then what do you do? And what's going to hold you back and what's going to block you? And so if somebody wants a read, it's a very quick read. It's less than 150 pages and it's all very high content and something that someone can use as a reference, as opposed to it's 300 or 400 pages and you have to figure out not only when are you going to read it, but when are you going to try to apply it? It's very applicable. Every single page, every single sentence, every single paragraph was really designed by me to give someone something that they could use right now and tomorrow and next year and the year after.
So with that being said, how would you recommend the reader engage with your book? Is this a book they can pop in and pop out when they need different information, or was it really designed to be read from front to back?
I like everyone to read all of my books, including this one, all the way through, so that they can come from a fully informed perspective, and then to take it section by section. Because I'm a coach, I like to assign homework and activities. So every single chapter has action items for people to do, and one builds on top of the other. But I think if you read the whole thing, then you know, okay, this is where she's going with this. And so here's what I need to do next in my mind.
Perfect. And Honoree, now that we have a great background of what it took, the inspiration and what makes it different than the other books, I'd really like to hand over the mic now and allow you to just take us from front to back, like you are sitting down with that friend and letting him know exactly what, you just obviously poured your heart, soul, time, money into this book. So we'd love to hear what it's all about.
Awesome. Thank you. So I started in chapter 1 asking the question, what do you really want and why haven't you already got it? And I am discussing in this chapter why you don't have what you want and what's happened to prevent you from getting it. And I talk about this guy, Ted, and he's not a real person, but he's in all of us, where he's just this unintentional guy and he's not really sure about why he hasn't achieved success. And it's not a story, and I'm not a fiction writer, but I like to to bring people some kind of recognition of themselves and to also know that they're not alone. So we start with Ted and we figure out why he's not achieving success. And then I bring it back to the person and figure out if they're resonating with Ted, why they're resonating with him, and then pointing them in the right direction by talking about my coaching philosophy and my coaching program. So I developed something for myself when I was in my early 20s called the STMA, short-term massive action. And it's now developed into my coaching program, 100-day coaching program, on which this book is based, and it's a companion for that. I work in shorter segments. So I start talking about the STMA, which is short-term massive action, and I help people to define what it is that they're looking for. So that vision, what's the vision, and then turning it into reality. And before they can really figure that out, like how they're going to get from point A to point B, they have to figure out what's in the gap. Because you're sitting right now where you are. And if we were to have a discussion, it would be, how many listeners do you have? How many listeners do you want? How do you find the authors to be on your podcast and all of that? And then there's a gap from where you are to where you want to be. So that's the question I'm asking, is how are you going to close the gap? But first, what is that gap? And then I talk about who someone needs to be, because I think beingness is so important versus doingness, if that makes sense. And I go through all of the things that who someone needs to be in order to turn their vision into reality. Then I get into the exciting stuff in chapter 2, which is what is possible. And I think pretty much anything is possible, with a few exceptions. Like, I'm never going to play for the Dallas Mavericks, and that's a logical conclusion we can draw. And then in chapter 3, I start talking about how your vision becomes your reality. How do you sit down and craft the vision? And it's surprising to me, and not surprising at the same time, the number of people who haven't actually given themselves the clear space to define and decide what it is that they want in their life, so that they can actually have a plan that supports that. So I walk them through that process. Here are all the questions that you need in order to brainstorm and be playful with yourself and write on this blank canvas that you have of a life. And then also to figure out what's going to possibly come in the way of your vision and how to avoid those things like the plague. Then we get into chapter 4, because once you've created your vision, then you need to have goals. So we start with the vision and then we work backwards to today. And the next step in that process is to figure out what your goals are. And I call them BHAGs, as do other people, big, hairy, audacious goals. And if you have the right goals, they get you up early and keep you up late. You're really, really tired, but you're also happy because you're building something that you like. So we talk about how to set goals so that they are driving you effortlessly, because it's so much easier to go and do something when you're going and you're actually being pulled toward it, as opposed to trying to force it to happen. Then in chapter 5, I get into the power of laser focus. How do you turn the actions that you have identified based on your vision and your plans into the action steps that you're doing every day? And how do you turn them into habits? Because knowing that you need to do something is different from actually doing it. And an example I use is, at one time your mother had to say, have you brushed your teeth? Have you brushed your teeth? Have you brushed your teeth? And then you say, look, I brushed my teeth. And then eventually you're on the 405 going, did I brush my teeth? It's so habitual. It isn't something you do. It becomes who you are. Well, you can actually turn the actions that you know you need to do into habits to turn your vision into reality as a business person, which I think is a very cool thing to know. I don't think everyone knows that. So then in chapter 6, I talk about what's your I am, because any word you say after I am, so if you say I am always late or I am always out of time, whatever you're saying to yourself is a command to your subconscious mind. So I just want everyone to choose their I am statements with intention and purpose. And then in chapter 7, the title of chapter 7 is Who's on Your Bench, which means who's in your environment, who's holding you accountable, who's pushing you, who's pulling you, who's encouraging you. And also, who are you using to help build your business? Who do you need to know? Who do you need to network with so that you can grow your business effortlessly? And then in chapter 8, I talk about your old habits. Old habits eat good intentions for lunch. And so trying to force it, trying to have willpower is not enough. And so you have to engineer circumstances in your life. And I give some examples on how to do that. And then finally in chapter 9, once we've got the vision and the goals, then we need the plan. So we prepare, we launch, we have accountability, and then we figure out what's next. And so that's chapter 9, is the planning phase of it. And in chapter 10, it's that we wrap it up with a bow, and it's now get what you really want. So figuring out how you're going to move yourself forward now that you have this vision and these goals and this plan. Now, how are you actually going to pull it all together and make it happen so that you've literally turned your vision that's in your mind's eye, the things that you really want. And now you wake up every day and you're like, guess what? This is, pinch me. Is this really my life? This is very cool. And that's pretty much the book right there.
Honore, that was a fantastic bird's eye view of the book. I think anytime I want to personally purchase a book after hearing an author run through it, I know that there's others out there that are thinking the same thing. So fantastic bird's eye view. This next question is even taking it, I guess it's even making it even more difficult, giving that, that satellite type view. And it's, if the reader can only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, everything that you just spent the last couple of minutes explaining, if they only take one thing out of that, what would you want that to be?
That they need to give themselves the clear space to define their vision.
Excellent.
It's so important, right? That you give yourself that space, because otherwise you're just in a rowboat in somebody else's lake or river or ocean. You're just kind of going along. You're going wherever the water takes you. You have to actually kind of decide and define and paint that picture for yourself. Otherwise, it's funny because Catherine Ponder, who wrote The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, she used to say something to the effect of either you are the broadcasting station or you become the broadcasting station for somebody else.
Yeah, that's huge. So I've taken a couple different, and actually just what you just said, there's been some great quotes that I've pulled out of this interview so far. But another question is, do you have a favorite quote from your book? This can be a quote, something that you wrote that you really think might be helpful to our audience. Or because your book's already come out, maybe it's something that you've seen, like we were talking about beforehand, maybe that a lot of people have highlighted, that they've tweeted, something like that.
Well, one of the favorite quotes of others from my book is "Committed eats impossible for breakfast." I like the quote, "Thinking you can achieve something unleashes the force that allows it to happen."
Those are perfect. I almost don't like asking this question on my side of things because I'm supposed to continue on. And the best thing about quotes is they make you think. I almost wish I could push pause on the
Yes.
every time.
Yes, let's think for a second.
Yeah, I wish I could push pause. So a lot of times I have to re-listen back to these to really get the full content because I'm supposed to be, keeping the interview moving. But for sake of time, I definitely will be going back. We put those in the show notes as well. So now I get to go on there, pop on, and re-look at some of the quotes that the authors give, which both of those are fantastic. So thank you for sharing those. And our last question is, if there was only one book you could recommend based on the way it had created a paradigm shift for you, really impacted your life, what would that book be?
Just one, not 100.
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh, so you and I were talking about Think and Grow Rich, and so Think and Grow Rich is kind of a like, oh, okay, of course, everybody recommends that. I'm going to recommend My Long Cold Ice Glass of Water on a Hot Texas Day, which is another book by Napoleon Hill, Law of Success. So it's the master volume, the 17 habits, principles of success. And it's about 1,500 pages. And I drink that literally like a tall glass of ice water on a hot Texas day. I read it and reread it and reread it. And every time I read it, it is fantastic and nourishing, and I love it.
We do have more time. Do you have another one? You said 100. We won't have time for 100, but do you have another one that you can recommend?
Oh, sure. So there's The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, which is the formula for getting yourself up every morning and setting yourself and your life up for success. There's The Power of Consistency by Weldon Long, which is about visualization and how specifically to create the mental movies that you play in your mind for 15 minutes every day, which help to draw your vision to you. There's Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, which I read a million years ago, and still it has shaped my life from reading it. The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity by Catherine Ponder, The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. Gosh.
How new is that Catherine Ponder book? I feel like I've heard it, but not read it. It is old. Okay.
Yeah, so it's probably from the 60s. Florence Scovel Shinn's book is from the early 1900s. There's some interesting present day things that apply to the present day. You think you're reading it, that it was written today, but it actually is applicable. There are two fantastic books. One is from 2 years ago or last year by Pam Grout called E Squared, 9 energy experiments. And then she just released on September 16th of this year, E Cubed, which is the next. And it's more about how, there's a lot of interesting talk and fodder around the law of attraction and how that works. And she actually turns it into scientific experiments that you can do to prove to yourself that there is a force in the universe that's working on your behalf, whatever you want to call it. So those books are fantastic. I mean, I could open up my iPad and just keep going.
Yeah.
So
I think you and I read similar type books in that we don't really judge it. It seems like a lot of people I talk to nowadays, unless it's new, they automatically think it's irrelevant, which makes sense if it's, how to, work social media, Facebook or something like that. If that's 10 years old, that's probably completely irrelevant because so many things have changed in that amount of time. But when I hear someone's like, Think and Grow Rich, that's kind of old. And like, yeah, it's from 1937. It's the principles still apply to this day. So
Right.
Yeah,
Well, and there's 2 more quick ones. One is The Millionaire Fast Lane by MJ DeMarco.
Love
And that's
that book.
all about entrepreneurship. And then there's The 4-Hour Work Week and The $100 Startup by Chris Guillebeau and Choose Yourself by James Altucher. I opened up my iPad. I decided to cheat a little bit. It's like, what's in here that's good? And a lot of what I'm reading is about being an author and writing. But I read this great, cute little book called Sleep Smarter, 21 Proven Tips to Sleep Your Way to a Better Body, Better Health, and Bigger Success. And that was fabulous. It was a super quick read. I've just gotten into The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to like that. It's great. Getting More by Stuart Diamond is one of my mastermind partners' Bible for negotiating and coming from a place of win-win and figuring out what the other person wants before you go into the conversation, and gives all kinds of really cool strategies. And honestly, I put this out into the universe, right? I wish I could read for a living. Who's going to pay me to read books and review them? Where's that podcaster or blog, right?
Exactly. That'd be amazing. That Sleep Smarter one that you mentioned, is that newer or is that older as well?
It's new. And I heard it on the Entrepreneur on Fire podcast. John Lee Dumas was talking about what he was obsessed with.
Awesome. Okay, who wrote that one? Who wrote Sleep Smarter?
Let's see. I'm looking here. Hang on. It's asking me to review it because I'm at the end. Hold on.
Oh, gotcha.
It is Sean Stevenson.
I'll just look that one up. I did not.
And then I have The Power of No by Altucher and his wife. So that's next in the stack.
Excellent. Well, very good. Well, Honoree, before we depart, thank you for all those books, by the way. But before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you and your book, Vision to Reality?
Yes,
Vision to Reality.
Yes, they can go to my website, honoreecorder.com.
Okay, excellent. Is that how they can also, because at the very beginning you kind of mentioned that you're a coach, can they also find out about that if they're interested?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we'll put that in the resource or the show notes as well, so they can go back and click on that just in case they're out. We were looking at some of these current episodes, and it seems like about 85% of people are on their mobile device, meaning that they don't always have access to, jump right on. They're not sitting in front of the computer listening to it. So for those of you listening, those 80%, you can definitely go to the show notes page and check out that link that she just gave us. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your book. We always call it your baby, but sharing your book, your baby, your creation with us.
Yes, thank you. I call them my children. That's so funny you say that because I call my books my children.
Yeah.
I have a human child, 2 furry children, and 13 book children.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
As always, thanks again for listening in today. If you would like to get your hands on Vision to Reality, or any of the other resources mentioned by Honoree, just look at the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.